There is no evidence that life in the universe requires the existence of human beings. That sentence may sound cold, perhaps even offensive, to the deepest pride of our species, the belief that we are the center of everything. From ancient times, humans have never stopped telling stories in which we are the main character, the center of the cosmos, the chosen ones, the ones with a mission. We take it for granted that life needs us, that without humanity, everything would somehow lose its meaning. Back in the days when people couldn't tell the difference between thunder and a divine warning, we had already begun weaving stories with ourselves at the center. Ancient civilizations didn't just worship gods. They designed an entire cosmic order in which gods created humans for a reason, for power, for rulership, to stand as representatives of the divine. In that world, humans were never just another living species. We were the bearers of a mission, and the more elaborate that mission became, the higher our collective ego was elevated. The story that God created man in his own image wasn't only a religious comfort, it was a way to reinforce the human ego at the level of civilization. Humanity wasn't just special, it was sacred. Other creatures existed only to serve us animals to ride, birds to predict the weather, land for farming, trees for shade, and timber to build temples. Everything was assigned a place, revolving around humankind like planets circling the Sunday. The universe was no longer a habitat, it was a stage. And, of course, humans played the leading role. When philosophy and classical science arose, the language changed, but the focus didn't. Instead of saying God's will, philosophers declared that the nature of man is greatness. Mystery was replaced by reason, but the human position at the center was left untouched. In Greek thought, especially through Plato and Aristotle, humans became the seekers of truth, the ones who could rise above animal instincts. Rationality became the new divine mark. From there, Western civilization built an entire ideology. The more rational you were, the more valuable you became, and the more deserving your existence seemed. Fast forward to the modern age. As religion gave way to science, one might expect that humanity's ego would be humbled. But that isn't what happened. We let go of God, but replaced him with progress. If once we were made in the image of God, now we are the highest product of natural selection, celebrated as the pinnacle of evolution. Our ability to program machines, to explore the cosmos, to extend life, these feats once again place humans at the center. Not the theological center this time, but the technological and intellectual one. Instead of prayers, we invent. Instead of offerings, we measure, model, and calculate. But beneath it all, the same desire persists, to feel special, unique, irreplaceable. Even in declarations of human rights, in missions to save the planet, in philosophies of sustainable development, there lies a hidden assumption. Humanity must be preserved, protected, empowered. This is not to deny the moral or scientific achievements of our species, but to point out something crucial. The ego is still at work. It may abandon religious language, yet it clings tightly to the idea that we are the only creatures capable of self-reflection, as if that alone secures our central role. In other words, we no longer say God needs us, but we still believe the universe needs us. And so, the illusion of centrality remains unbroken. From a biological perspective, though, humans are not the center of life. We are merely one accidental product in a chain of mutations and selections that has stretched over 3.8 billion years. The appearance of Homo sapiens takes up only a tiny fraction of that span, so tiny it barely registers. If the history of Earth were drawn out on a 10-meter scroll, the entirety of human civilization would be nothing more than a speck of dust. In the end, all the things we call human achievements, fire, writing, philosophy, the internet, came only at the very last moment. They are not the foundation, but the late surface layer. And if we look more broadly at the living web that covers this planet, humanity is not the core link. Plants, bacteria, fungi, insects, those are the true foundations that keep life in balance. The most essential biological cycles, photosynthesis, decomposition, the recycling of nutrients, need no human presence. Life on Earth ran for billions of years without us. And if one day humanity disappears, most other species would not call it a tragedy. They would go on adapting, evolving, branching into new forms. Statistics tell us that about 99% of all species that ever lived are now extinct. This is not an indictment, it is the very expression of life itself, always experimenting, discarding, reshaping, transforming. No tribunal of the universe passes judgment on the extinct. No cosmic council decides which species deserves to live longer. Species arise and vanish as a natural part of the stream of life, without sorrow, without joy, without attachment. And in that vast rhythm, humanity is simply one variation among millions of variations, perhaps a step forward, perhaps just a failed experiment. From the perspective of cosmology, our smallness becomes even clearer. The solar system, where Earth orbits an average star, in a spiral arm of the Milky Way, is just a speck among hundreds of billions of galaxies. Each galaxy holds hundreds of billions of stars, and each star may carry its own planets. That immensity is not only overwhelming, it points to a cold truth. The universe does not need human observation in order to function. Planets continue to spin, stars continue to burn. Supernovae erupt in the darkness whether or not anyone is watching. The light we capture from distant stars was released millions, even billions of years before humans existed. And even if no conscious being had ever seen it, that light still existed, still spread, still faded away. Human observation adds nothing to its reality. There is no sign that the universe waits for humanity to discover it. No evidence that our presence makes the cosmos more complete. The laws of physics, gravity, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics do not require human thought to unfold. They did not come into being when we discovered them. They have always been there, quietly operating, whether we gave them names or not. When we strip away the human-centered framework we've built, there seems to be no objective ground for our centrality. The universe neither rejects humanity nor affirms us. Its indifference is not malice, it is pure neutrality. It does not care whether we exist, whether we have meaning, whether we leave a mark or vanish without trace. And perhaps that is the hardest truth for the human ego to accept. Life, in its purest form, carries no morality. It has no inclination toward good and no intention to spread evil. Every judgment of good or bad comes from the human mind, attached to the raw flow of life, as a way to interpret, control, or endure a world we cannot fully predict. But when we peel away that layer of interpretation, life appears as it truly is, without emotion, without goal, without favoritism. It does not arrive out of love, nor depart out of punishment. It simply unfolds cold, impartial, and with no one behind the curtain pulling the strings. We often mistake nature for being gentle. We call the forest Mother Nature. We call the river a gentle flow. We call the sky a protective roof of love. But those images are not in nature. They are in our psychology. The forest does not feed us out of care. The river does not flow for our sake. The sky is not blue in order to soothe us. Droughts that scorch the land, storms that wipe out entire villages, fires that burn ancient forests to ash. None of these happen out of anger or out of a desire to teach humanity a lesson. They are simply the consequences of physical, chemical, and biological processes unfolding within a system that carries no intention. Even the phenomena we call miraculous, the multiplication of living organisms, the harmony of the food chain, the so-called balance of nature among species are not designed. There is no hidden ecological purpose behind them. They are the results of millions of years of directionless interactions among countless factors, a game with no winners. No merciful hand is adjusting the variables. No grand mind is writing the script of life. What moves everything forward is the ceaseless interplay between structure and condition, without praise, without blame, without choosing sides. From this perspective, we might even say, life itself does not know that it is alive. The tree does not know it is photosynthesizing. The bacterium does not know it is multiplying. The animal does not know it is evolving. Everything unfolds without awareness. Only humans endowed with the ability to recognize themselves stand as a rare exception. Yet this very exception has led us to mistake knowing as the essence of life. But in reality, it is not. Life can and has existed for billions of years without ever holding a concept of itself. It does not require consciousness to develop. It does not require thought to persist. And it certainly does not require recognition or reverence to continue. That is why, when humans believe that life should be good, that nature should be gentle, or that the universe should be just, we are simply projecting our own inner language onto a system that does not operate by such terms. We feel disheartened when a kind person dies young, when gentle species go extinct, when disasters strike, regardless of who is at fault. But from the perspective of life itself, no one is being punished, and no one is being rewarded. There is no right or wrong being established. Everything is simply happening like water flowing downhill, like wind rushing through a mountain pass, like a stone falling under gravity. Life does not exist to please us. It does not need our consent to operate. And in that realization, there is something cold, but also something true. Not cruelty, but impersonality. Not injustice, but inhumanity. A vast system is unfolding without a center, without a goal, without a soul, yet still proliferating, expanding, transforming, without end. And humans, if we dare to look directly at this, will no longer see ourselves as the protagonist in a story with a neat conclusion, but as a fleeting breath in a symphony without a conductor. When the ego is no longer the center, it begins to tremble, not a logical trembling, but a deeper panic within the very structure of being. For the sense of being acknowledged, being needed, of belonging to a framework with purpose has long been an invisible foundation that makes humans feel their lives carry meaning. And when that foundation is pulled away, what remains is not a new answer, but the raw space where the question itself becomes unavoidable. What emerges is not an answer, but an unnamed emptiness. No one calls for this emptiness to arrive. Yet when it appears, every system we once trusted begins to tremble. The question, what am I if no one needs me, is not merely a social concern. It touches the very roots of the ego, the part of us that has always needed others to mirror our existence back to us. If no one sees me, if no role remains for me to play, if there is no value system for me to lean on, then what am I other than a fragile form, alive only in this passing moment? This question cannot be answered by philosophy. It cannot be softened by comfort. It simply stands there, silent, like a chasm, hidden in the middle of daily life. From here, existential crisis begins to reveal its true face. Unlike ordinary psychological shocks, which have causes and can be explained by personal stories, existential crisis is the collapse of the entire framework of meaning. Phrases that once comforted us. Everything happens for a reason. Live with purpose. Everyone is born with a unique mission. Now ring hollow. Not because we have lost faith, but because we see clearly. These concepts were always stickers placed on life. Pretty, simple, but never actually attached to anything real. As everything begins to feel empty, a part of us tries to resist. The ego struggles to patch things back together, reviving old ideals, or inventing new versions of illusion, a new philosophy, a new spiritual goal, a new life purpose, this time more sophisticated, more disguised. But if honesty in our seeing is strong enough, we stop trying to mend. We allow the structures to collapse, one by one. Morality, ideals, religion, mission, knowledge, they are not smashed, but simply fall away, because nothing holds them up anymore. At this stage, many feel a deep bewilderment. Nothing left to believe in. Nothing left to strive toward. No one left to become. All past efforts now feel like arms flailing in empty air, reaching for something solid, yet never finding support. A condition so raw that language itself struggles to describe it, for every familiar concept has lost its footing. No longer am I good or bad. No longer am I on the path or lost. No longer higher or lower. Only a bare presence remains without identity, without purpose, without direction. And yet, paradoxically, in this nameless emptiness, something begins to stir. Not an answer, not a replacement system, but a pure silence free of interpretation. A space where life is no longer burdened with meaning, no longer required to serve any cause, and no longer in need of anyone's approval to be right or wrong. This is not a loss. It is a restoration. The old order has fallen away, but it leaves no ruin, only the unveiling of a form of existence that was always here. Life does not need possession. It does not need naming. It does not need anyone to hold it. And only in that state for the first time we truly live. Not for enlightenment. Not for righteousness. Not to leave a trace. To live as if no one is watching. This is not apathy. It is not carelessness. It is a return to the primal state of existence, where action is no longer controlled by the hunger to be seen, recognized, or defined. Much of modern life, whether consciously or unconsciously, is driven by the gaze of others. We act not just to do, but to be seen doing. We live not just to live, but to carve our name somewhere, even if only in the mind of another person, or on the surface of a social network. The need to be recognized is, at its root, a survival mechanism of the ego. It convinces us that we only truly exist when someone else affirms our existence. It creates the illusion that life must be witnessed in order to have value. And from there, step by step, it pushes us into a way of living managed by imagined eyes. The eyes of society, the eyes of others, even the eye of God, an ultimate concept we assume is always watching every move we make. But life does not need to be observed in order to be itself. A flower still blooms when no one sees it. A stream still flows when no one hears its water. These things do not happen for an audience. They happen simply because they are. They do not strive to be complete in anyone's eyes. They do not need to be remembered, praised, or preserved. And precisely because they are not controlled by the urge to leave a mark, they are truly present, pure, untainted by the ambition to become something more than themselves. That transparency, when no witness stands behind it, is a rare form of life. No longer trying to impress, no longer straining to become a symbol, no longer staging reality to meet expectations. Every action, every word, every moment of existence becomes light, because it no longer has to step outside of itself, to please no gaze, to satisfy no judgment. It simply is itself. And that, in itself, is enough. When a person lives as if no one is watching, they begin to draw closer to life as it really island. No longer pulled away by evaluations, no longer scattered by opinions, no longer forced to adjust themselves to fit any standard. They begin to live as nature lives, with no goal to reach, no achievement to measure, no image to maintain. And because of that, every moment becomes deeper, quieter, more real. The silence of a life that needs no recognition is a kind of liberation. It does not erase the human being, but it dissolves the shadow carried for centuries. The shadow of expectation, the shadow of reputation, the shadow of dreams begging to be remembered. When no longer bound by the question, "What will others think of me?" a person returns to being a humble particle in the vast current of life. Like a leaf falling without announcement, like a breeze that needs no name, like the morning light that does not need to be acknowledged. And perhaps only then do we truly live for the first time. Not to leave something behind, not to prove something to anyone, but simply because life, when freed from every imposed reason, is already reason enough to live. When all layers of meaning have fallen away, when reasons to live are no longer found, when the drive to become someone has gone silent, what remains is not nothingness, but a simplicity so pure it cannot be reduced further. A way of living no longer inflated by concepts, no longer stretched by goals, no longer driven by expectation, not prominent, not central, not necessary, but not absent either, like a speck of dust drifting in sunlight. This presence does not take up space, does not disturb the room, does not demand attention, and yet it is fully here, unhidden, unadorned, unperformed. It does not try to blend in. It does not rebel to stand apart. It simply exists, as one element among countless movements, claiming no special place, rejecting nothing. And only when we are no longer the center do we begin to see the deeper order of life, an order that does not revolve around anyone, yet in which everything has its place. Like in a forest, where there are no sharp boundaries, every life pushes in, coexists, interacts, and fades in its own way. There is no leader. There is no applause. There is no script waiting to be fulfilled. Only the silent unfolding, yet complete in every detail. To live like this is not to disappear, but also not to be someone in particular. We are no longer the anchor of a story, no longer the narrator, the listener, or the hero. In the tale we once imagined, we become a space, not empty, but unoccupied by ego. A clear opening through which life can pass without resistance. Not because we are important, not because we are enlightened, simply because life does not need us, and yet still flows through us. If only we are quiet enough not to disturb it. Thank you for walking with us, not as an audience, but as someone who has truly listened to themselves. We'll meet again in the next Silences of Awareness.